Alaska seabirds feed within 1 fathom of the surface. Shearwaters are the exception. They can dive to over 200 feet. Generally speaking, Alaska longlines sink to a depth of 1 fathom, anywhere from 15 to 70 fathoms behind the vessel. This distance depends primarily on vessel speed, but propeller wash, weather, current, and gear type are also part of it. Most seabird attacks occur between 5 and 30 fathoms of the stern, where the line is closest to the surface. Ground lines in this area are most vulnerable to seabird attacks and must be protected to avoid seabird mortalities and bait loss. Collaborative research with industry discovered that streamer lines, a bird scaring device, reduced seabird bycatch dramatically. Current regulations require most Alaska vessels to use streamer lines as a seabird deterrent. What follows is an outline of the streamer line requirements in general terms, along with ideas for rigging and deployment. For full details on requirements for your vessel, contact the National Marine Fisheries Service Enforcement. A streamer line, also called a bird line or a torii line, is a 50-fathom or 90-meter line that extends from a high point near the stern of the vessel to a drogue, usually a buoy with a weight pulled behind the vessel. As the vessel moves forward, the drogue creates tension in the line, creating a span from the stern where the streamer line is aloft. The aloft section includes streamers made of UV-protected, brightly colored tubing spaced every 16 feet or 5 meters. Individual streamers extend to the water to prevent aggressive birds from getting to the ground line. When deployed in pairs, one from each side of the stern, streamer lines create a moving fence around the sinking ground line, regardless of wind direction. The Alaska research demonstrated that streamer lines deployed in pairs reduced bycatch by 88% to 100%. Single streamer lines were less effective, but still reduced seabird bycatch by 71% to 91%. Current regulations require vessels 55 feet and over fishing outside waters to tow at least 2 streamer lines. Vessels 26 to 55 feet are required to tow a single streamer line depending on available rigging and area fished. The regulations specify the distance that the streamer line is aloft astern of the vessel, the performance standard based on vessel size. For vessels 100 feet and over, the performance standard is 33 fathoms, 60 meters. For vessels less than 100 feet, the performance standard is 22 fathoms, 40 meters. Because many vessels using snap-on gear must go in reverse to create slack off a hydraulic drum to set the last anchor, the performance standard is reduced, 11 fathoms, 20 meters, and streamer lines can be shorter, 23 fathoms, 45 meters. The distance aloft is absolutely critical for 2 reasons. First, it minimizes the chance of fouling the streamer line on the ground line, and second, it protects the area of the sinking ground line most vulnerable to the birds. The performance standard can be achieved by manipulating 3 aspects of streamer line rigging: the height at the vessel, the weight or diameter of the backbone, and the amount of drag. Height above the water is the most critical factor in achieving performance standards. As a rule of thumb, attach the streamer line to the point that results in it being at least 20 feet above the water at the stern. This could be an existing structure such as the mast, a boom, or troll pole bracing. Be sure to attach a lazy line to the streamer line so that once it reaches its full height off the deck, it can be retrieved. Dedicated longliners should consider installing poles or davits at the stern for streamer lines to simplify deployment and efficient operations. An oblong-ribbed or skid buoy with about 10 pounds of weight attached tends to provide sufficient drag to achieve the performance standard. Be sure to snug added weight as close as possible to the nose of the buoy to minimize snags on the ground line. Other ideas for creating drag include semi-inflated, deflated, or water-filled buoys or buoys with holes drilled in the nose or cut to function as a sea anchor. Incorporating breakaways, about 100 to 200 pound tensile strength, into the streamer line is highly recommended for safety purposes should the streamer line foul on the ground line. Breakaways at the drag buoy are a minimum precaution. Swivels at each end of the streamer line reduce wear and prevent twists. Once the streamer line is set up on the back deck, deployment becomes a routine part of your fishing operation. Initial deployment, however, will require some thought and communication between the captain and crew, but quickly becomes habit. Here we demonstrate deployment techniques that have worked well on a range of Alaska longliners. Consider these as you work out techniques for your vessel. Deployment of a single streamer line, or the first of paired streamers, is straightforward. Immediately prior to setting the first bags and flag, toss the streamer line buoy into the water and allow the streamer line to fully deploy. It will quickly reach the performance standard as the line goes taut. In most cases, the first flag and bag and the streamer line buoy can be set simultaneously. In most sea conditions, you can avoid hanging the bags and flag up on the streamer line by tossing the bag and flag as far to port or starboard as possible. As an added precaution, you can use a turn maneuver to clear the streamer line from the quarter immediately behind the gear deployment area. Initiate a turn of about 10 degrees away from the side from which you are setting gear, just prior to setting the bag and flag. Retrieving the streamer line prior to deploying the anchor eliminates the possible hang-ups on the second bag and flag. To be effective, it's critical to fly a single streamer line directly over the gear. In weather, a single streamer line is most effective when flown from the windward side of the vessel. Seabirds, especially albatrosses, are most agile in wind and always fly into the wind to control their flight, especially to land. A streamer line on the windward side of the vessel arcs the streamer line over the gear, with the streamers creating a diagonal fence blocking off access from the leeward side. If the performance standard is being met, the buoy will be well clear of the ground line at 50 fathoms astern. Although the windward access to the ground line is exposed, seabirds cannot fly with the wind on their tails. Unlike paired streamers, the single streamer attachment point to the vessel must be adjusted based on wind direction. A simple solution is to rig a streamer line on both sides of the vessel and deploy the windward streamer line as conditions unfold. One of the 5 short-tailed albatrosses killed in the Alaska longline fishery was on a vessel with a streamer line flown from the leeward side of the ground line.